Камеру чуть, наверное, убавлю свет на полицейском, чтобы увидеть проектор. Или не надо? Да не хочется, надо практически. Плохо же белое пятно такое. Вокруг меня? Звони очень, если что. Я просто даже не знаю, что надо. А расскажи мне, если не секрет. Так, а зачем 120 на 20? Я тоже так сделал. Ну, картинку увеличиваешь. Разреши, как правильно. Ну, я убавил, смотри, что-то не очень стало. Ну, слышишь? Ну, вот так вот я тебе, наверное, сделаю. И слишком темная группа. Участники задают вопросы. Слышно на трансляции?
Насте, скажи, допустим, она девочку назначает сама.
Насте какой-то?
Синица.
Аня Синица. Я...
То есть во время дискуссии, чтобы трансляция... Да.
Раз. Все, поняла, спасибо. actually quite simple, and it's a touch screen panel, so you can see if you wish. So you just
樊老师，你的东西在哪里？
Okay. 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 这个放进去，对吧？This is for me. Not another one is
okay, this is this.
校长的他这次他自己他也放这个新版。
Okay, dear colleagues, welcome everybody to Ekaterinburg, which is a bit cold today, but tomorrow it will be much milder. Well, at least they promised so. We are going to work for 2 days. However, tomorrow in the second half of the day, you will have a nice trip to Europe-Asia border and to the monastery where the last Russian Tsar killed here was buried. So this is a kind of cultural excursion. So even if you have 2 busy days, you would have some time to relax, I hope, and to have some cultural activities tomorrow. Now let me, for opening remarks, we have 3 speakers here at the table. Instead of Professor Sergei Yerofeev, Vice Rector of Higher School of Economics, who could not come today, we have very distinguished guests from Brazil, ahead of the delegation of Brazilian universities to Moscow, the Brazilian universities came here to Russia and they are going to stay here for some time. So some of them came here to Ekaterinburg, and Professor José Celso Freire will also talk in this panel. So we have Professor Viktor Koksharov, the rector of Ural Federal University, Ekaterinburg, Russia, and he is our first welcomer of this conference.
Dear colleagues, it's a distinct pleasure for me to greet all of you here at the Ural Federal University and to talk at the opening of the conference devoted to the collaboration of BRICS universities. We at the Ural Federal University do believe that it's high time to start real cooperation, real network educational and research projects among the BRICS universities. On the one hand, the universities at the research centers of these countries are trying to enhance their international visibility, global reputation and competitiveness, and it is certainly much easier to do it together, trying to help each other. We all share the persistent feeling that BRICS countries being really important in terms of economics, in terms of natural resources and global positioning in politics, territory and all other things, do not take the real and distinct position in the world university rankings that they really deserve. We at the Ural Federal University believe that BRICS countries must become, for us, for our university, the main target countries when we organize international collaboration. I should mention here that internationalization, enhancing global visibility and organizing wide international collaborations are the main strategic priorities of the leading Russian universities, and first of all of the Ural Federal University. The point is that the university is a member of so-called 5-100 program. This program started under the decree of Russian president, and the goal is to be till the year 2020 within top 100 universities of the world. This program is called Enhancement of Global Competitiveness of Russian Universities. And we try hard to become a very attractive place for foreign students, teaching staff, faculty members, researchers from all over the world in general, but from BRICS countries in particular. Our centers of excellence include IT, energy and energy saving, flexible technologies, new materials, living system, life systems and health care, but also the wide spectrum of natural sciences, social and political sciences, economics, humanities, and so on. Ural Federal University is already an important center of international collaboration in Russian academia. We coordinate the efforts of all these universities which are included into the program 5-100, and there are up to now 14 universities, the leading universities from Russia. We all are the members of Association of Global Universities, or Global Russian Universities. And we are responsible within this association, within all these 14 universities, for coordination of our collaboration with associations of foreign universities. This year, we recruited more than 700 students from 51 countries of the world, recruited into the Ural Federal University. It's really unfortunate, however, that among these 700, more than 100 is from one sole country, from China. And so we got quite a few students from other countries of BRICS, from Brazil, India, and South Africa. It does mean, however, that this collaboration has some space to grow further. We hope that consortium, which is forming now, would be able to attract attention of national and international foundations, which provide support for students going abroad. Brazilian Science Without Border, or Russian Global Education, as well as various Chinese and Indian support schemes. And from our part, we are ready to allocate resources within this program of enhancement of global competitiveness into fostering of international exchange students. In our university, for example, we have 400 special grants for students coming to partner universities abroad, 100 grants for students, for international students, for incoming students, and 50 special grants for postdocs. So we are ready to give resources also for this mutual cooperation with the universities of BRICS countries. With this in mind, I would only like to wish you all pleasant stay in Ekaterinburg. Of course, this is a cold weather outside, but I think that our warm hospitality would overcome everything. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, Viktor Anatolievich. The second, welcoming speech is of Professor Lu Shizhu, Vice President of Zhejiang Normal University.
Dear Rector, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. First, thanks Ural Federal University for inviting us to participate of this global education institute of BRICS cooperation legal. We come from the Fudan University and the Tsinghua University and the Zhejiang Normal University as the practice of the partner of the Institute of the 5 Chinese University Legal of the BRICS. We extended warm and congratulation to the conference and look forward to the fruitful assembly result. Last year in the Shanghai cooperation forums, the 9 universities of the Chinese and the Russian proposed the invitation that is establishment of the BRICS University League. This initiative has not only been of the support and the response by the BRICS University, but also and great attention by the BRICS government statement in the 6th BRICS leader pitch in the July of this year and held in the Bruce have published the government welcome the promotion and to the establish the BRICS University legal. We hope this conference can contact in depth and comprehensive discussion on the cooperation this program. I hope we can reach a consensus and the promotion cooperation progress. As possible as in the short times will we formally establish our BRICS University legal. At the same time, we hope to be able to focus on the important issues of the common conscience, explore way to and carry out the cooperation model, pathways, and mechanism. In July 2015, we have started to the program of the Summer School of BRICS in Fudan University. And we have achieved a good result. in the 2015, we will have the second summer school of BRICS, and have further expanded the school in this year with the 20 students in the next year, and 8 to the 13 students. Reach the course content. I hope this student exchange program can be able to conduct some accomplished experiment for the cooperation of the BRICS University League. On the best day of this meeting, we propose have an international conference, BRICS lectures, in Shanghai at the end of the May 2015. I hope you can come to Shanghai and discussion speed about the BRICS University League in ways and means to the other module programs, and promote this progress. Finally, I wish the conference and the comrade successful. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And last but not by no means least, Professor José Celso Freire from Brazil, from UNESCO Universidad. As well, I don't actually cannot pronounce it in Portuguese, but this is State University from São Paulo, right? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Maxine. Good morning, everybody. I would like to thank Maxine for the invitation, to thank Professor Vitor Koshakov, Rector of Ural Federal University, for inviting us here. I'm from São Paulo State University, a public state university in Brazil. Just a few words about the higher education system in Brazil. In Brazil, in the public systems, we have the federal universities and state universities. Federal universities mean that they receive money from the federal government, and the state universities receive money from the states. Then we have here 4 Brazilian universities, 3 federal universities, Federal University of Rio de Janeiro, Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul in the south of Brazil, Federal University of Rio Grande do Norte in the northeast part of Brazil, and my university, that is a state university in the state of São Paulo. We have 3 state universities in the state of São Paulo, between the 5 best universities in the country: University of São Paulo, University of Campinas, and São Paulo State University, my university. I'd like to tell you why we are here. And we are here in the largest context. We are 11 Brazilian universities here in Russia for a meeting with universities from the 500 program. We had this week a lot of meetings in Moscow. Our delegation had 7 rectors from Brazilian universities. We have meetings with the Ministry of, the Vice Minister of Education and Science of the Russian Federation, Alexander Povalko. We signed an agreement between, I forgot to mention that I'm the president of the Brazilian Association of International Education. Then we signed an agreement between our association, FAUBAI, and the program 500 for exchange of faculty, for exchange of students, for exchange of not academic staff. Sorry, that's it. And second, I would like to tell you about an invitation from the Brazilian Minister of Education for a meeting in Brazil. And March 2nd, we will have a meeting of the Ministers of Education of the BRICS country. And His Excellency José Henrique Paim, the Brazilian Minister of Education, are inviting the universities of the BRICS to be in Brazil in March 2nd. And we will organize, FAUBAI and the Minister of Education, a matchmaking day. At the same time, the ministers will be together. We will organize a matchmaking to discuss possibilities of cooperation. Then it will be March 2nd, 2015. I would like to talk a little bit about cooperation. We have FAUBAI and IEASA, the International Association of the Association of International Education of South Africa. We are working together since 2 years ago. Then we have a lot of cooperation. The former president, Laverne Samuels of IEASA, was in Brazil in our 2 last conference. I was this year in South Africa for the IEASA conference. Then we have some cooperation between our institutions and between our associations. Brazil and China, we have a lot of programs together, and Confucius Institute. We have here two universities with Confucius Institute. My university, we have a Confucius Institute selected by some marketing, selected best in the world, 2010 and 2012 by Hamban. Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul, Nicolas, that is here. They have also a Confucius Institute, and there is a lot of cooperation between Brazil and China. We don't have cooperation with Indian University. Then I think it's a good opportunity for us to start this cooperation. I think it's everybody. And we are very happy to be here and would like to be part of the BRICS League University. We would like to discuss this and other possibilities of cooperation. Thanks again.
Thank you, and I just would like to mention that our director of our Confucius Institute skipped actually the meeting of Confucius Institutes in Hanbang in order to be here. So she's here, and if you have you know, any kind of questions about collaboration, you can contact her. Okay, thank you very much for all our welcomers. Before we go to the you know, kind of working day, I just would like to thank the rector of Ural Federal University for visiting us and for welcoming, and well, just to say thank you. And okay, dear colleagues, I just would like to, well, I will start today's plenary, but before starting, I just try to figure out how it works. I mean, the technology. Now, okay, this is BRICS Studies Center. We just organized in at Ural Federal University, and I would like to give this presentation on behalf of this center. So the presentation is about BRICS education and research initiatives in the context of current global trends. So what I will try to do is to first analyze some trends in global academia. I mean, why international collaboration is getting more and more important today. Then I will proceed to the questions of BRICS collaboration, you know, kind of in particular. And after that, I will try to, well, to propose a schedule for our work, you know, for which I think questions we should probably discuss and which questions we should answer during our meeting here in Yekaterinburg. So first of all, I would like to start with, you know, as I said, description of some global trends in education, and in this sense, the first and the most prominent maybe trend in contemporary global education is its massification. Education is getting more and more mass. More and more people are enrolled each year in the institutes of higher education. More and more students are getting tertiary kind of education. So you can see this is a trend everywhere in the world, you know, from sub-Saharan Africa, which is, you know, the proportion of population who get the education is tiny, of course, but still it is growing, up to North America and Western Europe, where, you know, the number of people who are getting tertiary education is, you know, striving to reach kind of almost 90%. Okay, so this is the first very important trend. The second trend, which goes together with the first, with the massification of education, is its globalization. I mean, education is getting more and more global. More and more we have in the world, we have more and more international students. In 39 years, the growth is 463%. So if in 1975, in the world we had only 0.8 million international students, now we have 4.6 million, and we are going to have, according to UNESCO kind of forecast, we are going to have by 2020 about 8.5 million international students in the world. So the number of international students will double by 2020. So this is, you know, kind of the first trend. The second trend is also very important. If some years ago the global education was, or the international students were going kind of following, you know, the borders of former empires, like, you know, in French Empire, you know, they were going to study in France if they were from, well, say, French-speaking former colonies of Africa. You know, they were going to the UK if they were from the Commonwealth, etc., etc. Nowadays, the market of international education is changing dramatically. Countries like China are getting, you know, very popular students' destinations now, and not only, you know, the senders of the students. I mean, the amount of the students China is getting now is, you know, increasing every year. I mean, foreign students, and China is getting, is becoming very important study destination, and not only the center of the students. Now, the situation, the market is reforming, and I think that we BRICS countries have kind of window of opportunities opened up, you know, to participate in this changing market, to take, so to speak, our share of this market, you know, in the in several years. China is ahead of all BRICS countries in this sense. However, we all have the potential, you know, to be more attractive for foreign students, I would say. The next important trend in the context of which we work nowadays is, of course, commercialization of higher education. I mean, the institutes of higher education are becoming brands, are becoming companies. Higher education, you know, the universities, you know, the role of the universities is changing in contemporary world. There are basically two models, I would say, which define this role of, this changing role of higher education, of the institutes of higher education today. The universities can be seen either as companies providing or producing curricula for the students, and then, you know, we have the product which we produce is our curricula, and our client is student. And then we have kind of client-student oriented model of higher education. The second kind of model, which coexists you know, almost uncritically with the first one, is understanding of the university as a company producing graduates to companies. So we have employers as our main clients, and our main production is our graduates. So in this sense, our job is to tailor graduate according to the demands of employer. And this is employer-oriented education. And I think that these two models, well, they obviously very different, but they coexist not only in one educational system, but also in, you know, in one university like ours. I mean, humanities or social sciences are student-oriented kind of disciplines. And engineering or natural sciences are employers-oriented. And, you know, our university, which cover 80% of all possible programs taught in Russia, basically, I mean, have all these, you know, both these two models together. So they are kind of contradicting. And I think this is very important context in which we are working today. Now, the education is getting commercialized, the education is getting more and more mass education, so we have more and more students, and the education is getting more and more international. Now, I think that the very important thing is to find out or to produce a guides for the students which on which you know, particular universities to choose, or how to choose the universities. In order to do that, in order to produce such a guide, you know, the idea of world-class university has been elaborated. World-class university is, of course, it's kind of Anglophonic or Anglo-Saxon model of education in a way. However, and this is the model of research university as well. It's not a model of teaching university, which is, you know, a completely different thing. However, you know, the model of world-class university as a model of the university which concentrate the talents, which concentrate the resources, and which is characterized by more or less effective government and management. So this is the company which manages resources, you know, to, you know, for the sake of the talents the university gets. I mean, the talents can be different. It's not only talented students, but also, of course, talented researchers and talented professors. And the resources can come from, you know, the government, from international foundations, from the companies, etc., etc. But the university is a kind of, you know, the center of attraction of both talents and resources. And in order to discern which universities are kind of world-class VCUs and which universities are not world-class universities, you know, the big three of the academic rankings was produced. The big three, I mean, Times Higher Education Ranking, THE, QS ranking, QS World-Class Universities ranking, and of course Shanghai, so-called Shanghai University ranking, RWU. You know, there is a, there was a very important research made by the company called IDP in China on the reasons for the students to choose the universities. The research was made in 2012. And according to the results of this research, the majority of this international students, especially the students from Asia, I mean the opinion poll was done in Asia. The majority of international students choose the universities according to international reputation or international ranking. So the reputation is provided by ranking. So 33% of the students choose the university on the basis of their, you know, position in the ranking. So rankings becoming more and more powerful. And this is a new business. I mean, only 10 years ago the first rankings came to existence. And nowadays some countries, you know, tailor their immigration policies according to the rankings. Rankings are becoming really important in shaping our global world of education. Okay? So rankings play an increasingly important role in WCU formation through attracting talents and resources to the top-ranked institutions of higher education. And the difference between those institutions which are top-ranked and those which lag behind is getting, you know, wider. The gap is widening in this respect. Now let me proceed to the analysis of BRICS countries. Well, it's not about BRICS, it's about BRIC, CK. This was the research of Thomson Reuters done in 2012. It does not include South Africa in the research, but they included Korea instead of South Africa. So they called it building BRIC, like CK, you know, China, Korea, Brazil, Russia, India, China, Korea. So in all these countries, we have this, you know, very rapid growth in gross domestic product in all these nations, and of course China is ahead of all other countries. These countries are spending more and more resources for the research and development. They are increasingly spending more and more money for education and research, and this you have the some data about annual change in gross expenditure on the research and development. Okay. The number of researchers per country counted as full-time equivalent is getting also higher, and you can see that Russia takes kind of the second position after China according to the number of the researchers per country. So Russia is doing, you know, in this respect quite well. We have people and we have money for them. However, you know, if you compare annual research publication output, China is, you know, rocketing. The other countries are, well, more or less a lag behind, and Russia is not doing exactly well, according to the number of publications at least. Okay, and this is seen as a problem in Russia. That's why, you know, this new program of 5-100 was elaborated. This is what Russian universities are trying to do. They're trying to focus money in some leading universities, 14 leading universities in Russia, in order to somehow make this money work in the right direction. Okay. And this is the annual number of invention patents applications filed by 5 BRIC countries. You can see that China again is the first, South Korea is the second, and well, all other 3 BRIC nations are not doing exactly fine, including Russia. I mean, this is also a problem. Transfer of technologies is another problem which we all have to face somehow and to, you know, overcome these issues. However, we do thus, you know, the analysis shows, the analysis demonstrates that we all have more or less common challenges. Rising economies share similar problems and challenges. Some are kind of global problems, some are more local problems. First of all, we all face reputation challenges. The point is that many of university rankings, including THE and QS, they reflect existing structure of academic power in the world. Somehow they reproduce, you know, the situation which was produced years ago. They are quite slow in reacting on, you know, positive changes in emerging economies. So this is one of the problems, I think. The reputation of the countries and educational systems is changing slowly, and the rankings react even more slowly to these changes. So for rising centers, it is extremely difficult to get proper recognition. And these are all issues of academic reputation which we all must build together. Secondly, we have these challenges of transformation on education according to international, meaning Anglo-Saxon, mostly standards. I mean, and this is not only Russia or Brazil. I think Germany more or less facing, you know, similar problem, because, you know, the kind of the France, I mean, the education or global education is based on the model of more kind of UK, the US basically mostly on the model of the US research institutes. And well, France and Germany, for example, do not really correspond or easily correspond to this model, so they also have these challenges. It's not only BRICS countries, it's a global challenge. We all have the issues of publication indexes, especially in, well, and it reflects language issues, of course. We don't have too many Russian publications in major, quotation indexes like Scopus or Web of Science. We don't have, fair representation of social sciences, humanities, political sciences in those indexes, and the universities are judged according to the indexes. Even if you publish, I mean, in history, for example, in the discipline, in such disciplines as history, the monographs matter much more usually than, the journal publications. And only journal publications counted when they assess the universities. And this is the issue. I mean, this is a global issue in as far as the disciplinary priorities are concerned, but this is also a global issue for the emerging countries. And of course, we all have the problems of branding. I mean, in order to enhance reputation, you have to be visible. And this is not actually easy to be visible well in the places like Yekaterinburg, for example. The majority of the people in many conferences, they're asking me where I am situated. And well, some years ago, I used to say that, well, Yekaterinburg is the place where they shot at the last Russian Tsar. Last year, I changed slightly branding, saying that, well, this is a place where, well, nearby the meteorite fell. So this is about, kind of meteorite or, tar place. So the issues of branding are very important. And we should do something about the brands of our countries, places where our situation our universities are situated, and the universities themselves. Okay, rankings, fairly enough, try to be sensitive to some of these problems, and what they do, they create specific rankings for the regions. And now they started creating specific BRICS rankings in order to somehow accommodate the growing calls for recognition from, or demands from recognition from BRICS nations. So QS created rankings of BRICS University, THE created BRICS and Emerging Economies ranking, which was announced, a couple of days ago in Moscow. A new QS Eastern Europe and Central Asia ranking, the results of which is going to be announced very soon in Budapest in several weeks. QS Latin American Universities ranking, QS Asia Universities ranking, THE Asia University ranking, etc., etc. So the number of rankings growing. However, this does not contribute to the visibility of our universities on global scale. I mean, even if we are doing fantastically, I mean, Ural Federal University is the 80th, I think, in BRICS, in QS BRICS University ranking, but it's still only 500 something in QS World University ranking. I mean, it does not actually solve the question of visibility and solve the question of academic reputation. So this does not make, I would argue, BRICS universities more visible on the global scale. So what the main problems of BRICS as a unity, I think, are quite also important. First of all, BRICS is not a region. BRICS is not like Asia or like, Latin America. We don't have the borders with each other. It does not too matter if, in the era of jet planes, of course, but well, some of you experience quite long distance flight this time, and you can appreciate that, well, it's not exactly always easy, you know, to get to such distant places. Secondly, BRICS countries do not have any shared academic space. I mean, what is, you know, what we all have in common? Well, South Africa, Brazil, Russia, China, India, I mean, we are very different. And our academic systems are very different. Some are based more on UK model, like, you know, like the system in South Africa. Some of them are based more on German model, like Russian, and in a way Chinese system used to be, because we kind of shared, you know, during Soviet times the same sources. We came from more or less, you know, similar source of education. But we are very different. BRICS educational systems, economies, societies are also very different. And we all have very peculiar problems. I mean, well, again, compare the problems South Africa have after, you know, the colonial regime and Russia has after Soviet Union. I mean, this is very different situation and very different problems we have to address. That's why people like Professor Philip Altbach, you know, well, leading figure in educational studies from Boston University, and who just talked in Moscow, just presented in Moscow his, you know, ideas about teaching. He used to think, at least, that talks on BRICS in education do not make much sense. I mean, talks of BRICS are more like clubs, like club of the countries. You know, emerging economies. Why do we talk about BRICS in education? What is the added value of talking about BRICS in educational, you know, when we talk about education? So, to be able to address the issues of global education together, there should be real collaboration of BRICS universities. We still don't have real collaboration. We collaborate with China. I mean, Russia collaborates with China extensively. We started kind of collaborating with Brazil, you know, after, I think, several weeks ago in Prague, or several months ago in Prague. We started kind of systematic collaboration. We don't really collaborate with, you know, on extensive basis with South Africa or India. I mean, and this is a shame, because in Soviet Union, for example, the ties between India and Russia were quite tight. Nowadays, it's not really, I mean, at least in education, it's not really a case anymore. So I think what we need in this situation, if we are going to answer the global questions and face the global challenges together, what we need is real collaboration. I mean, we need to create some kind of common educational language together. Now, here comes the idea of the seminar, why we invited all of you here and what we would like probably to do together, and I guess that Peter will add to that also something. So the idea of the seminar is first to discuss the possibility of network educational collaboration between our universities. I mean, this is what we all, I think, need. We treat all, you know, scholars here, not only as scholars, but as representatives of the universities as well. So we would like to start, you know, through this kickoff meeting, to start real kind of collaboration, not only political collaboration. We already collaborate, and this is very great in the BRICS University League. However, we should also start steering kind of real academic exchanges, for example, real educational exchanges in the framework of the BRICS University League. Now, we decided to focus this time upon social sciences and humanities. We just thought that it would be easier to start real collaboration in BRICS countries. And we kind of both, myself and Professor Peter Wagner, who is a co-steering and co-directing this initiative, we both share this interest in social sciences and humanities. However, we can add either later or now to add other disciplines as well. I mean, nothing prohibits us from, making it wider and, putting on the table things like IT, for example, or nanotechnologies. I mean, we can talk about it. We must discuss, I think, the content of our exchange programs. That's why we try to organize it in a way of presentation of your universities, but also of your programs, because we should know each other better in order to organize real exchanges. So we would ask you to talk about the programs you kind of have on the table for other universities to consider. We should talk about how we organize exchanges. I mean, this is a very important thing. There is also a very technical thing on how we distribute quotas. For example, we agree, all our universities agree that we organize network exchanges. But then the question arises, for example, in our BRICS studies program, we have 3 persons who would like to go to China, 3 to Brazil, 2 to India, and 1 to South Africa. How we are going to get the students back, from your country. So, for example, we just sent 1 student, no, I mean in exchange. For example, we send one student to South Africa, but South Africa would like, the University of Johannesburg would like to send 5 students to Russia, and Brazil would not send. No, well, this is the question. I mean, how we organize real exchanges, and we should at least, we probably wouldn't be able to answer these questions now, but I think we should start thinking on that, on these kind of practicalities, in order to talk over emails or, afterwards. Well, of course, there are financial issues. And this time, the university kindly provided support for, our gathering, but this is a question how we support real exchanges of the student. And of course, it's a different kind of thing, and different amount of money would be involved. So I think that we should think which kind of resources the universities are able to use, like local grants, national mobility schemes. The rector mentioned, Brazilian Science Without Border program, Russian program of global education, etc., etc. We all have different schemes, but we should think how we can use them, for the benefit of our group as a whole, if we are the group, and we should agree on that first. And also we should try to think about international sources of funding, of course. Now, 3 very important things I would like to mention, in the end of my talk. First of all, these educational programs are not obligatory degree programs. They are not only master or PhD programs. They can be, we could start with kind of postdocs programs. We are very happy, would be very happy to invite some postdocs from your universities to Ural Federal University and provide some grants for the postdocs. We can talk about short courses, summer schools. You know, we, together with Higher School of Economics in St. Petersburg, we are organizing a very nice summer school, you know, when we invite people in nice, green, warm Yekaterinburg in the summer. They spend 10 days here, then, you know, they take 2 days train, very nice train, to St. Petersburg, you know, kind of guided tour through the country, and then 10 days in St. Petersburg. So this is the idea, and we can talk about that, about exchanges in our summer schools. I think we can discuss that later. We can talk about short courses like we are trying to do with Fudan University on doing business in China, doing business in Russia, kind of exchanges. Secondly, second thing I think it is very important to mention that it makes sense to organize our activity in the framework of already existing kind of normal, well, again, framework, which is organizational framework, which is BRICS University League, you know, and I hope that we will be able to talk a bit about what it is, what the BRICS University League is, and you know, how the declaration was signed and what's going to be, you know, during our course, because we have a coordinator of the BRICS University League here, which is Fudan University, and Professor Fan. We should also agree on our future meetings. I mean, this is also a question to discuss, not today, but before the end of our meeting, and one of our proposals is HSE St. Petersburg. In St. Petersburg, we are going to organize a conference on education and global cities, BRICS perspectives, where the Association of Leading Russian Universities is going to sign the agreements with foreign associations. So we are talking with Association of American Universities, Brazilian associations, Latin American association, etc., etc. So we are trying to get in St. Petersburg in this white night kind of time, or almost white night time, which is May 28, 29, 2015. Well, the dates can be changed. It's not yet, they are not yet final, but we will let you know the exact dates. This is our proposal. However, you know, Professor José Celso mentioned Brazil, March 2nd. I think this is also nice nice opportunity, you know, to come and to continue talking, because the Ministry of the Education of Brazil, you know, getting BRICS universities. There is also proposals from our Chinese partners, because they are going to be kind of gathering in Shanghai of BRICS University Leagues, but they will talk about it, I think, later. So there are a number of opportunities, and I hope that we will take chance to meet each other more or less regularly. Thank you for your attention. Okay, and now we have coffee break, right? Where? Okay, it's this way, coffee break. Thank you.
You just go straight forward.
Ну, есть, да.
Сейчас я тогда, да, давайте. Сейчас я там.
Надо вот эту вынуть.
Да. Зачем мне справка? Тут очень такое мерзкое.
Да, тут непросто, да, я вижу.
Сейчас.
О,
Мерзость.
все, закрывайте.
Сам закроется.
Сам закрывается. Ну, сейчас я просто... Я думаю, что я качну сюда вот это. Ну, вот, собственно, все, да. Да ё-моё. Да.
Будь, ну пусть она.
Ну, да, можно выдернуть. Да.
Okay. Dear colleagues, hope you enjoyed coffee break, refreshed your strengths a bit. So now we continue our plenary, and a co-organizer of this initiative, Professor Peter Wagner from University of Barcelona, Spain, who is a leading world sociologist, especially in the field of sociology of modernity, one of the founders of this theory, will present his vision on our BRICS initiative. And his presentation, his paper, is called BRICS Studies and Global Modernity, the Agenda for the Social Sciences and Humanities. Peter, floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maxime, for not only for getting me here and getting me involved, which is a great pleasure for me, but also for the kind introduction. Maybe I should say something at the beginning, because you may wonder that I'm among the very, very few of the participants in these meetings who is neither a citizen of a BRICS country nor even working in a BRICS country affiliated with a BRICS institution. So you might wonder what I'm doing here and why I take the time to speak here now to you. Well, I think I should say about my background that I have been doing quite some years ago studies in the history and the sociology of the social sciences. So I've been studying social science developments mostly in Europe, I have to admit, but in a long-term perspective, trying to understand the relation between the social sciences and the societies they are about, the societies they are researching. And more recently, I have been studying contemporary societies and their historical transformations, again, starting out from Europe, North America, with a few looks at the Soviet Union. But my recent project is a comparative study of Brazil and South Africa in comparison with European societies. And I hope that my future project will be broadening this perspective beyond these two societies of the B and S of BRICS to include all of the BRICS societies. So it's against that background that I speak to you. And I'm glad that Maxime said that I will present you my vision because I want to propose you a view on something which might be a general framework within which we can situate the activities that we are trying to develop here. A way of trying to understand what it is that we are about to embark on. And of course with a bit of the subjective understanding that I offer, so maybe we can later discuss that in more detail. What I want to offer you is a reflection on BRICS and the study of BRICS societies under in the form in which I mentioned right now, namely as a reflection about the relation between a changing world and the changing social sciences that try to understand that changing world. Anthony Giddens, the sociologist who's now in the House of Lords in the UK, has called this the double hermeneutics. And we can use BRICS as an example. As you know, BRICS, the term emerges from economic journalism. So it is a kind of observation on changes that are going on, the emerging economies debate. Then it becomes a political concept in practice, also a practical political concept due to the association of the BRICS studies, of the BRICS countries in the form in which it has developed, the Development Bank, the summits, and now the University League. But now we are also feeding that back. We are turning BRICS into an object of study. So this is the circle of understanding between the social sciences and the societies they are about. And I want to suggest that BRICS, in this double sense, is indeed really a very important element of our time. That's why I use the term BRICS and global modernity just as a shorthand to try to grasp what our time, the trends in our time, really are about at this moment. And I want to suggest that in this sense, BRICS signals the emergence of a different way of understanding the world, and in particular, a way of understanding how regions of the world regions, relate to each other in this current world. And to do this, I want to offer you a very brief and sweeping walk through the history of social science understandings of the world and its transformations, some of which, especially those of you who have a sociological background, this will be very familiar to those of you. But I hope to then give it a particular twist by relating it to the current BRICS discussion. So let me start and develop this reasoning in a few steps. I'm looking at the social sciences and humanities in this broad understanding, the old time-honored program of the social sciences from the 19th century onwards when they were founded, namely to understand the contemporary world and the dynamics of transformation, the logics according to which this world changes and takes shape. And if we look at the 19th and early 20th century, this will be very sweeping and schematic, as I said, we have these grand proposals which are still with us. We have the proposal by Karl Marx to understand this world through forms of competition and antagonism, a competition between economic agents, but also competition between social groups, between classes as class struggle. And we have the proposal by Emil Durkheim to look at the world in a more functional way, as a division of social labor and the consequences which that brings with it, the specialization and the exchange which happens then when there is a strong and pronounced division of labor. Or thirdly, Max Weber, who looks at the cultural, ideational underpinnings of the world, the self-understandings of society, as we can call that. These are all proposals, these different perspectives in which one can see the world and the way it changes, the dynamics in which it changes. And they have been significant and they will remain significant for us. But the way in which they were proposed in the 19th and early 20th century, there are severe limits to it in the way in which, this is my common thread, the running theme, in which world regions were placed in this world. Namely, this may be most clearly in Marx's view, there was an evolutionary understanding, stages of development, where some regions of the world are ahead of others. Even though they're all in the same time, obviously, if we look at the contemporary world, the assumption was, a very peculiar assumption, if you think about it, that some societies are ahead of others, even though they are in the same time. Some are advanced and some are behind, although they are contemporary. In maybe even a more radical form, we find something similar in Durkheim, who makes this conceptual distinction between modern societies and traditional societies or primitive societies in the terminology of the late 19th century, where again, and now in less in terms of a flowing dynamic temporality, but in terms of two different situations, a distinction is made which is then mapped on the world, that is important, where some societies are modern and others are traditional. Or, in a different form, in Weber's understanding, if we look at his sociology of world religions, where there are spaces in the world, civilizations defined by their dominant religions, and they are seen as rather stable. They don't change much over time, and they are very homogeneous. The assumption is that there is something like a Protestant region of the world and a Confucian region of the world, and everyone who lives there shares the same outlook on the world, and they will do so over a long time. This will not change, basically. So again, that is a very specific, in this case a different, but a very specific way of ordering the world in terms of different regions. And I just give you examples of the consequences. Some of you may know about that. If you think, for instance, and referring to BRICS, indeed, in the way in which Marx wrote about India, when he was writing for New York newspapers about the effects of British colonialism on India, there was this view that clearly imperialism is destroying the social and economic structures of Indian pre-colonial society, but at the same time that this is a progressive move, that this destruction moves India forward in time. The application of this very specific Marxian worldview to a region in the world he was looking at that moment in this journalistic form. Or, to give one more example, if you consider that Weber then privileged the Protestant region of the world by thinking that he could identify the possibility of rationalization of life conduct and worldviews only in the Protestant region of the world. And we all know in recent years this has been challenged, where indeed it was argued that this kind of rationalization is possible also against the Confucian background. But with this approach, we only reproduce the same problem. We don't step out of this specific way of looking at different regions in the world. Now, you may think, I tried to avoid this with my last remark, that this is old stuff, that this is the history of social thought, and we have now advanced. I will suggest that we have advanced a bit, but very slowly and only recently. Because if you look at the recent past, already way into the 20th century, after the Second World War, in the second half of the 20th century, this way of thinking emerges into the opposition between historical materialism on one side and modernization theory, the sociology of modernization and development on the other side. And in both cases, you have the same view of a thinking of time of change in which world regions take different places in time, have this possibility of being in the present or not yet in the present. At that moment, and I will come back to that later, emerges what at that time was the most productive change. If you think that historical materialism comes out of Marxist thinking and the sociology of modernization and development out of Durkheim's thinking, Weber's thinking was most productively approached by Schmuel-Eisenstadt, who reread the comparison of world religions and said, well, there is something more in there than Weber thought. And he came up with the idea of multiple modernities, that indeed there is not, it was a very fruitful approach that Weber started, but he was actually wrong in thinking that one of the religions was so much different from the others, the Protestant one. Rather, one should open this to a more symmetrical comparative study in which there are just different modernities. There are different ways of being in the present, of being in the current time, and we don't have to make this hierarchical distinction of some being ahead and others behind. So, but despite this, and I will say a bit more about the multiple modernities approach in a moment, even way into the 20th century, in the 1970s and the 1980s, the whole thinking about regions of the world and how we can analyze them in social, economic, and political terms remained caught by this way of thinking, which is even true for a criticism of these approaches. And again, I will give examples from different regions of the world present here. Dependency theory, as developed in Latin America, was criticizing the ideas of modernization and development, but it remained caught in the same logic, namely thinking that Latin American peripheral societies had been placed in a relation of dependency from the centers, from the metropolitan areas, and couldn't get out of this. So again, there is a distinction between social places in the world that cannot be overcome. Or post-colonial studies in India, subaltern studies, they criticize earlier views of Indian history and how it changes, but they could not but address this in relation to the colonial experiences and with a critical view on the concepts that were applied to Indian society by European and British thinkers. Or finally, when apartheid in South Africa was analyzed as a peculiar form, a very particular form, a special form of imperial colonialism, again, it was clearly identified that there was a need to understand the specificity of that situation, but it could only be done by using the general concepts that had been proposed in European social thought and sociology. Now, this is even true, or the problems remain in the multiple modernities approach, so let me say one more word about that. The idea there was basically that there are crystallized civilization in the world, like the Russian, like the Chinese, like the Japanese as well. And they indeed, have their places in the world and stay there. They capture the population of that region, and that remains stable over time. The only thing that happens is that at a certain moment in history, these civilizations encounter Western modernity, and out of this encounter of classic civilizations with Western modernity emerges a new form of modernity. The multiplication of modernities that Eisenstadt conceptualized emerged like this, out of the encounter of, say, Chinese civilization with Western modernity, or Russian civilization with Western modernity. Now, this is an advance over the thinking, because at least then the world regions are in the same time, but it is a limited advance because it still makes the understanding of other regions of the world dependent on what happens to them in the encounter with Europe or with the West. And it is only much more recently, namely only in the 1980s and 1990s, that this very problem has been thought about more profoundly. I give you two examples which some of you may know. Out of an Indian context, this is Dipesh Chakrabarty's work on provincializing Europe, which is a sustained reflection on what the relation actually is between Indian history and Indian historical experience and the European concepts that are applied to understand it, a way of trying to step out of the dependence on European concepts while acknowledging that European concepts have changed the world, have transformed the world. Or in a rather similar way for an African, a sub-Saharan African context, Achille Mbembe's work on the post-colony, which tries to do something similar for the African colonial experience. Now, what I want to suggest to you, and I also don't want to take too much of your time, is that with these latter steps intellectually, works like those by Chakrabarty or Mbembe, but maybe more so with actual changes in the world over the past 2 or 3 decades. And these changes are significant not only in economic terms, the emerging economies debate, but also in political terms. Think in particular, that is my current research, as I mentioned at the beginning, of the democratic transformations in countries like South Africa and Brazil. There has been a considerable transformation of the world over these 2 or 3 decades, which entails indeed a new way in actuality, in the actual world in which world regions relate to each other. It is something which maybe is not yet entirely there, but which announces the loss of hegemony of the West and the old connection between Europe and North America, but also in its current form in the world, which also entails a loss of intellectual hegemony. So that what we may be arriving at finally is the possibility of a truly symmetric study of world regions with their own histories, interconnected histories, obviously, not isolated histories, with their own cultural expressions, their own social transformations, their own political forms, which will be analyzed in a BRICS cooperation by researchers based in those regions themselves and in cooperation with each other. That, I think, is something which I could see as a very challenging and stimulating and fruitful agenda, or a framework for an agenda of the discussions we are having here when we think about exchange and intensification of relations between BRICS universities. Thank you for your attention.
Sir? I just would like to, give floor to the audience, to ask questions, either, to both kind of papers, and then we have some pre-organized comments, we also have some papers which are in the
Yeah, thank you very much for your question. Maybe, if you allow me, let me start my answer by raising a thought which I had after having listened to Maxime, because I think the question you pose emerges because there are these global trends in the higher education institutions which Maxime was talking about. And while he was talking, I was thinking in the beginning, massification, globalization, he was talking about trends where one has to adapt oneself to them. These are the trends of the time and one has to adapt. Whereas as he was going on, I thought, well, maybe not all of these trends one has to adapt to. To some of these trends one also has to resist. For instance, when he was talking about the devaluation of the monograph in favor of the journal article, or it was talking about the different languages in which scholarship expresses itself. There, I think, again, in a qualified way, one has to think about that, but that at least a certain degree of resistance is also needed, because these trends are not good trends to follow. They are problematic in important respects. So that was, in a sense, the preface. And there, I think that there is probably a difference, now talking more about the substance of research and higher education, between different fields. It also shows a bit, where rankings make sense and where they make much less sense. Because I think if we were trying to organize cooperation in particle physics or cancer research, I think we should follow the best example. We should aim at the highest standard. But if we do research in the social sciences and humanities, we should be open for the plurality and diversity of the world. And that means that what is now considered to be the example or the model maybe is not an example and not a model, but something very specific, something that has been specifically developed in some regions of the world that happen to be powerful, but where there is no reason to follow that model. And there I think also that, in that sense, I think my response to the area I know something about and I'm interested in, the social sciences and humanities, should more be maybe not necessarily the development of an alternative model in general, because if one starts out from there that one wants to make a difference at any price, that may not be the good guideline, but I think we should, in this cooperation, develop the social sciences and humanities as they are appropriate for the societies that we are studying. And that probably means that it's different from Western Europe and the US, and that a different approach will emerge. And indeed then also, that is what I wanted to underline in my presentation, it will also not be a homogeneous one, because what we should be able to show is also the diversity among the BRICS societies in light of the different historical experiences, the different cultural expressions and the like. But to say it shortly again in summary, I think for our fields it's more the idea of doing what is appropriate for BRICS societies and not following a model, not adapting to trends.
Well, I would just contribute a bit further on that. Well, I also think that elaboration of kind of, different model as such is a bit problematic approach. I mean, well, the understanding of world-class universities, is there already in the world. I mean, we have to somehow to incorporate our vision in the dialogue with this concept which is already there. I mean, speaking about education and constructing the universities. We cannot just to create our own kind of BRICS world-class university type. I mean, and create our own ranking, to be, visible. I mean, it's not exactly right approach. I think we should somehow be in the dialogue with existing model, but answer at the same time the challenges of our own kind of societies and type of modernity in the way in which we all exist.
Maybe you have based on principle of modernity, but BRICS rankings are based on principle of diversity. Okay.
Sir, you made mention of subaltern studies and subaltern approach. Now, in Indian context, this approach is very, very important, sir. Because it is the history of the subalterns, meaning the history of the operations of these groups, the poor and the marginal sections of society. And to put in a context, they are talking about questioning which history that are you talking about? How about our history? How about our contribution in the history, writing and all that? So in this context, can we make use of this particular approach in this context?
The approach of the subaltern study.
Yes, subaltern study.
Yes, certainly. I think we should. I think in the view I was presenting, I see subaltern studies for India, which obviously, I mean, you know this much better than I do, but as far as I can see, is the important critical understanding that emerged from Indian scholarship. And in parallel, the way I see it, dependency theory for some time was the most important critical approach developing in Latin America. And there is, in one sense, a similarity, a formal similarity. In substance, they are very different, but a formal similarity between them because they are the important steps of changing this hegemonic situation in which the others speak about you, but you do not speak yourself. What I wanted to add in this presentation was that I think maybe now one can go one step further because these approaches, they emerged in a situation in which the overall world order was still quite hegemonic. And now it is much less so. I think now, partly thanks to these approaches, in the world one can speak with different voices and be heard with different voices. That was the struggle, I think, which the subaltern studies were fighting and which dependency theory was fighting. But now, in a sense, hopefully, maybe I'm too optimistic, but I think the changes in the world have gone on so that this fight to some extent is won, and now one can talk with these different voices also to each other to compare the situations of earlier dependencies and current plurality and diversity emerging. Thank you.
Okay. Well, if we don't have... yeah, okay.
And I maybe just add one remark about this question of the models or not models. Clearly, I agree with you that, as I said in response to you as well, that one shouldn't at all costs try to develop a different model. But I also think that maybe there is a bit of a chance, maybe not now, maybe it's not the most urgent thing, but to pluralize also the way in which quality in the global higher education system is talked about by developing not competing rankings, because that will be very difficult, but by developing more specific rankings. I mean, for instance, or rankings, evaluations, let's say, because not every evaluation has to be a ranking, especially when we have diversity. There is not necessarily always one on top of the other, but there can be different qualities. And there I think that, for instance, in our fields, the social sciences and humanities, it might be interesting at some point when this cooperation has developed to see whether one cannot come up with quality assessments that give some space to this diversity. Because otherwise, and this was the example which came to my mind, one remains in a situation and I give you that example, that at the current moment it is still the case that people who study Latin America to make their reputation have to go to meetings of the Latin American Studies Association, which is a US association for Latin American studies. They have to pass through that. If they have not been recognized there, they are not leading in the field. But that is wrong, I think, because it must be possible to do Latin American studies without getting the proof of quality from US scholars.
Okay, thank you. Now, it is a pleasure for me to give floor to Professor Daniel Alexandrov, who came to us from, well, also quite cold, but not that cold for the moment, St. Petersburg, Russia, from Higher School of Economics, and who will give a talk on, well, kind of comments on the general question of the plenary. Okay.
Thank you very much. It's a privilege to talk to you, especially after Maxim and Peter. And it seems that we're framing the discussion nicely, that Maxim was talking about general development of BRICS countries and universities globally and in BRICS. and Peter gave a theoretical approach on how to think of modernity development and how to see it in diversity with different voices talking to each other. And I will go down to earth of producing academic collaboration and academic student mobility. I will talk about, not about theory and not about BRICS countries, but about our approaches, our potential strategies in making students interested in what we're discussing here, because that's not easy. I'm not sure that, I mean, I do love social network theory. I do research in social networks. But unless we frame social network analysis in some new fancy internet thing, it's not that interesting to students, because when I talk to them about statistical modeling of networks, it's less interesting than internet. And I do love social theory. I used to read Peter Wagner's work, long time ago, and taught it to students in my course in History of Social Sciences. But I know that that's for only a few of my students, this approach, and many other people want to do something more practical. They want to do empirical work and then go into business or into social work. So it's not, I mean, and we cannot probably build our collaboration around just the idea of universities or the idea of social theory. So what are our goals? To start with, what are the goals we have for this meeting? As far as I understood, is that we're not interested in Russian students just going to study in Brazil, or Russian students going to study in China, or Chinese students coming to Russia, to our universities. What we want to do is to develop academic cooperation between our universities, right? And probably more or less on master's level. On an advanced level, when students can get engaged in research projects and work with us meaningfully. So it really doesn't matter whether it would be students, advanced college level students who are interested in writing senior thesis and honors work, or it would be postdocs, or it would be, doctoral students. We want to have, student mobility. We want to have joint programs and collaborative research projects. And we want both academics, scholars, and students move between the countries in our universities, not just universities in general, because that's the purpose of the BRICS University League, to enhance cooperation. So what would be the strategies? In short, I think that the academic mobility, especially the mobility of students, is the key to success. If my students were to go to Sao Paulo or Rio de Janeiro, or to go to Cape Town or Johannesburg, or to Beijing to study for a semester, or do something with my colleagues, that will make me interested in collaborating with colleagues. Because we have more students than we have teachers. The teacher-student ratio. So, the students I see as drivers of cooperation. We often think of ourselves as drivers of cooperation, but we just a starter for the engine. And the engine will be students moving between universities. And how we can bring this enhancement of mobility between universities. What sort of research themes and what approaches in education research we can use to build our academic programs and research cooperation. Because it's not that easy. I'm not sure, I was trying to work with students, making them international, but they're not that interested in going to Sao Paulo or Delhi or somewhere else. They want to go to Berlin, to Paris, to London for studying. But they want to go to India and China to do things. not to, and they want to go to Rio de Janeiro, Sao Paulo, in order to do things there. Students, actually, young people actually want to be involved. They are willing to go somewhere to work as volunteers, not only tourists, not only studying, not only learning, but working. And it's much more appealing to them than just an academic work. The project work is much more appealing than classroom work to them. And we'll be able to have many more students traveling between the universities if we offer them opportunities to be involved in local research projects, in local activities projects. You know, many universities has locally supported NGOs working with them, or local economic and social development projects, you know, supported in their own countries. And that would be an ideal place for students to get involved. So I think that what we should do is the emphasis on project work and internships, not only on student exchanges for a semester or a year, but also like an internship in the summer. If, you know, students from South Africa, from China, from India come to Petersburg, Yekaterinburg, we can place them in various local projects we work with, and that will spark their interest. Moreover, I think that actually that will, I will say a few words about that later, that it will create a chain reaction of interest. The other thing is that what we can offer is research topics. And I start with the well-known dictum by Clifford Geertz that anthropologists do not study villages, tribes, towns, neighborhoods, they study in villages. And that's true for all social scientists. Most research problems are studied on local level. So within the framework of multiple modernities and the varieties of modernity, students who do research, you know, following Peter Wagner's work, would go to their countries like Turkey and do things there, take interviews about, you know, institutions, how they work, what is the difference of Turkish institutions from, you know, English institutions, or go to China, to India. And that will be, you know, interviews taken locally. And we cannot study the varieties of modernity in a delocalized form, in a delocalized sense, like we do with physics, which is like the same law is everywhere. People have to go and get involved as researchers in interaction with local people to learn something about the local forms of organization, to think about modernity and the differences between local forms of modernities. And moreover, BRICS countries, I think, are large enough to sustain cross-regional comparisons. There's a great variety, you know, of modernities within China and especially within India, with the multitude of languages spoken in India and being united by English as a, you know, English medium between local languages. And so I think that in our work, we can emphasize collecting regional data and making case studies. So I'd rather in our proposals for joint degrees or for exchanges between programs, I would think of research emphasis not on already obtained quantitative data existing in some forms of databases economists would like to work with, or I like to work with. When I do cross-country comparisons, I work with teams in PIRLS and PISA. But instead of going somewhere and collecting data there, interacting with local people, and it would be important for Russian students to start studying Brazil, China, India, going there, getting involved, two things. So what would be the research foci for such success? Which topics would be theoretically interesting in the framework of multiple modernities and also open for action-based involvement? And I think that's the studies of different forms of social organization enhancing human development. And that's important for all our countries: China, India, Brazil, South Africa, Russia. We can study social problems in local perspective, public services and human development, public administration, public policy, institutions enhancing human development, in a comparative framework. That would be issues of health, education, social care, work conditions, inequality, poverty, youth work. And there are different types of inequality in our countries. It will do a lot of good to our students to come different countries and see for themselves, how inequality is organized. Because it's one thing to look at ethnic inequality in Russia. It's very different to look at ethnic and racial inequality in Brazil, and talk to local researchers about the issues of race in Brazil, because it's a very special case, very distinct from what we know from the United States or any other country, as far as I know. So to sum up, what we can do is that we should start project-based learning. And here, just, I missed the opportunity before to say this, but I'll say it now, that my vision of future cooperation and my interest in it was sparked by my own students who started to work in different countries. I launched a project on poverty research 8-9 years ago, and one of my students, after working with me in rural Russia, wanted to study poverty in India. So he went to Mumbai for a summer school in poverty research and capability approaches. And there he got an invitation from a local NGO to study rural schools, and we do study rural schools in Russia. So he spent 2 months riding around in the state of Maharashtra with the interpreter and distributing questionnaires to patients in local clinics. We had to devise a questionnaire on patient satisfaction in English, which was then translated in Marathi, and then distributed in local language. Then we devised a survey for local rural schools about aspirations of children and, things like that. And, after that, he came back to us, he studied with me, then he went to Sweden to get a degree in international development. He wrote his master thesis on schools in Tajikistan. He wanted to do in India, but wasn't able to go there. And after that, after him, we did have a chain reaction. Every year, there are students who go to India and teach there in summer camp in the same NGO. I don't know what they teach, dancing or what. I mean, some English language, something, because they just want to get involved, because that's the time for them to travel and do things. And after that, I have a student who also worked with me in rural areas. She went for half a year to work in Uganda. And then after Uganda, she went to India, and now she wants to build up a center for international volunteer work in our higher school of economics, to send students as volunteers to India, South Africa, Kenya, Tanzania, and I think that's what we can do. So it's not only, you should say that it's not only learning and case studies, we should help students to get involved. They will drive what we want to do. So, again, reiterating that we should have active involvement in students, and we should think of studying local solutions to social problems, because that will reveal how local societies operate on its own. Because, we know from anthropology and social sciences that actually whatever big actors like the state or international agencies like, World Bank would offer you as a policy will be very different on the ground, because people will tinker with it. People will change these policies. People will work with it, sort of taking control of actual processes. And that's what we can study in a comparative perspective. That would allow communication between our students, between ourselves, because we would be interested in the same problems and the same objects, like schools, local health clinics, you know, local social care centers, you know, across our countries. And that would work for us well if we, I think, it's, to focus on it. It's not that I deny other topics its significance. For example, now with my students, I work on big data. We study internet data. Oh, I mean, you can study internet data anywhere. So the best center now is in Qatar. They have a Qatar Computer Institute, and where a bunch of people studying social media all around the world. They can study, you know, Indian Twitter, American Twitter. You don't have to have exchange of students between the countries to study Twitter. And it's fun to study Twitter, but we're here gathered because we want to study something regional, local, national, in a comparative perspective. And I think that would be the way to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. And just speaking about Twitter, I would like to attract your attention to the hashtag. So if you tweet, please tweet with this hashtag on the screen. Okay, any questions? Yeah.
You know, I'd rather work on a student exchange than fight any government, because, you know, fighting government is a hard task. So, you know, I'd rather concentrate on teaching students than fighting governments. And I think that actually, I mean, my suggestion is, I don't think that following my suggestions would change the flow of students from Rio de Janeiro to Paris, from Rio de Janeiro to Yekaterinburg. That's not possible, right? People, you know, there are the major centers of knowledge, and there are major flows where people go. What we can do is we can diversify the flow. So instead of just, you know, 3 streams, there would be some minor streams. That's one thing. The second thing to say is that I think the students who would go, like my student who went to Mumbai, finally went to Lund in Sweden to get a degree. So my point is not that after going to Mumbai, he would then go to get a PhD in Mumbai. But at least, you know, he got interested in this area. So instead of staying in Russia, being focused on Russia, or going from Russia directly to London, being focused on on global issues of economics. He got interested in India, in human development, in a broad range of topics. And I think that's the way to do it, you know. For the humanities, for people interested in culture, I would suggest to invite them as volunteers to some art festivals in St. Petersburg, so they can get involved as volunteers. And then they would think, that's an interesting city. We can go and study for a semester there. So instead of offering them just the semester abroad option, you offer them also some activities option. And then they will choose, you know, going to, you know, Rio de Janeiro or São Paulo or any other, you know, city in Brazil to study for a while. Because they don't have first time to study Brazilian version of Portuguese. They will just, you know, they'll just go for fun. And then they'll try to study the language, and they will be able to study even in this language. So it takes time, you know. And what I'm offering is that sort of, you know, step-by-step options of students being involved. Because for many students, going for a year somewhere is quite a jump. It's quite a leap, you know. And if you offer them, you know, additional steps of, you know, they can probably climb the ladder rather than jumping.
I also have a thought on that. I mean, well, some universities, for example, we are situated here in the center of very, you know, heavily industrialized region. So our university has lots of connections with, you know, huge companies, local companies, but also transnational companies working here. I mean, one of the streams of the same kind of thing of which Daniel just told, I think, would be getting internships, you know, or interns from other countries, you know, to local industries or to kind of companies through the university. So it is also a possible kind of exchange we can do. Another option and it goes not only to social sciences and humanities, but also for natural sciences, engineering, and science like that. We can do master projects, you know, together with our professors and, well, Ural Federal University. We are here in the Institute of Social and Political Science. However, you know, for example, speaking about our university, our main strength is elsewhere. I mean, energy, IT, and things of which the rector talked about. So it's not, well, as I said in my kind of pre-talk, you know, is that we decided to focus on humanities and social sciences now, but it's not, you know, we are not limited. We can expand this.
Okay, thank you. Well, I don't know about language body because I'm not responsible for administrating of creating new centers in language. What I know is that the most important, the main factor in studying language is motivation. People who don't have practical motivation to study English are not studying it. And those who, think that, I'm going to travel, they just absorb it without even studying. So, my point would be to start with practical things. Send a student to Brazil, somehow. He will survive, she will survive. That's not that hard, especially if there is, if there are connections locally, and then, the students will come back saying, oh, just give me, lessons in Portuguese. I need it, It's not the other way around. It doesn't help much to teach, Chinese and Portuguese, to students in the university without giving them real incentive for studying it. So, the incentive first. That would be my point. That's the whole, slogan. The incentive for mobility comes first. Everything comes next as an outcome of this.
Okay. Yeah. Last question, and we proceed.
Chris.
Yeah. Chris. Oh, okay. Two more. Then, yeah.
Sir, if you see the 2 decades experience of the process of globalization, that binary that has been established around the world, local and the global, and in the process, what is happening is the local issues have been marginalized. They are not very significant. The people have been talking about local culture, local health, and this and that. The global health and global culture and this and that. But you are proposing that, that studying local solutions to the social problems. So I think there is a contradiction, there is a complexity there.
There is this funny concept of locality and globalization, that you cannot see globalization until you see how it influences local life, because otherwise it's just a general talk about globalization. So there's always an interplay between local and global. And since globalization is a buzzword of our days, it's more emphasized than, it's globalization, right? Talking to me, if I were to talk to journalists, I would say, yes, we're going global with this BRICS initiative. And when I talk to you, I'm saying we're going actually local, because I think you will understand what I mean.
Yeah, we are going, by the way, we are going online, because these proceedings are actually online with, and you will, and you will get the links to YouTube.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah. Chris.
Now I know that, I don't want to ask a question.
No, please do.
Just two brief things. Firstly, I have to do my usual thing of sticking up for taking a slightly contrary view to you. Much of economics is microeconomics, dealing with large pre-existing data sets, and I would argue very strongly that any good economics involves going and understanding the country. We now have, for example, the Chinese household panel survey, big data set that can be used in collaboration, cooperation with Russia, America, Britain, Germany, and the other great panel data sets. And going to China is essential for understanding that, whether the data set is downloadable or not. So that's just my economics as a social science speech. But the other question, the main question I have is that I like your incentives and doing things ideas, but it always comes back when we have this conversation to intra-BRIC mobility, seemingly. And my
Absolutely.
And so the idea that British students would come to Russia and do things, and China would do things, and allow for mobility in the other direction, but maybe Chinese students don't want to go and do things in Yekaterinburg, they want to go and study in Germany or Britain or in America. But that those other students from outside the BRICS countries want to come here. And surely that's part of internationalization in this framework as well, not just intra-BRICS, but...
Sure, absolutely. It's just that, I mean, I think that, I mean, there are other, okay. I mean, it's even three-tier, so, have, rich countries, BRICS countries, and then, developing countries, which are, I mean, like Kenya or Tanzania. And I think that actually some of my students would go not only to South Africa, but to Kenya or Rwanda, to do work on health. And that's good. What we're discussing here is whether we can join forces in creating the sort of a wheel which would work, as a driver of all these exchanges. Because, actually, I think that for some of my students, working in Brazil or South Africa would be a step in going to London, to UCL, to do doctoral studies. So they would, but then they will go not as Russianists, because, I mean, they have experience in Russia by leaving it. But they will go on the strength of their experience in South Africa and continue to work on South Africa. And I think that would be great. I mean, of course, I'm speaking as an academic who wants to replicate, himself in many other academics, doing things. And I always thought that I can prove myself as a good teacher and a scholar if I can study something outside of my country. I mean, because, and then I can send students to do work in other countries rather than just, using the position of being Russian and studying in my own neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I'll try to make the next presentation work.
You should find my. Okay. Oh, that's you. Okay, then. I didn't see that much. Oh, that is presentation. That's the one.
Okay, there is some problem with the presentation. I will try to break. Okay.
What is it?
It says access problem. It says that there is a problem with the.
I brought the computer so I can do another copy.
Yeah.
If you want. Maybe. Okay.
Doesn't really. Okay, let's try to. Okay, colleagues, we do have some minor technological problem, but we will try to solve it. No, because mine is from Mac. Now it is my pleasure to give floor to Claudio Pinheiro with the talk on relevance of the BRICS to global knowledge production, please.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you very much, Maxime, for the invitation to be here, and for Ural University for providing us this great environment for the discussion. I would like to start telling a little bit about my background. I'm working both sides, so I chair one institute for South-South cooperation in academics, and I am doing research on this as well. So I will try to merge some of your initial points with the agenda that Peter was developing, and I'll try to concentrate on the imaginative framework for BRICS in the global political economy of knowledge production. So I'll try to put some flesh and blood into this idea of how modernities, multiple modernities can merge into our agenda, and how difficult it is, as Daniel was saying, to convince students, fellows, and most importantly, people from the agencies that sponsor research production, knowledge production, to understand the relevance of initiatives as this one to change the environment on knowledge production globally. So I will start, if you allow me, with an anecdote, a provocation that is regarding the name of my country, Brazil. Must be that at least my Brazilian colleagues would say Brazil, the name of the country comes from this wood called Brazil wood, which was the basic commodity for exportation during colonial times in the 16th century when the Portuguese arrived there. But there is a very curious, peculiar story about another possibility of for the name of the country, which comes from a 6th century kind of fable from an Irish Christian monk who was named later St. Brendan, and said that there was this imaginary place. How can I go further? Yeah. No, now I am. Yeah, okay. This imaginary place called High Brazil. So High Brazil was not a continent, but one island. You can see it here on this early 7th century drawing. And then High Brazil was this place, unique place. Oh, I'm always, okay. Okay. This very unique place, this very unique island that you wouldn't see any illness, any excess of hot or cold weather, hungry, thirst, or sadness. It's a kind of earth paradise story that you see all over medieval times. People were having this kind of mythology about imaginary places and all. What is curious about this legend, in particular, is that this High Brazil place was a movable island. So no one could actually reach the coast, because every time you approach, it moves. So I think it gives more or less one idea of how the debate on development is framed for ourselves, if you compare to other countries. So it's a never-ending catch-up story. We cannot arrive to development no matter what we do. So I take it as a metaphor, but I think it's not actually a metaphor, because when we conceive new agendas for knowledge production, sorry, I'm struggling with this modernity here. So when we think about new agendas of knowledge production and this geopolitical division of the world, which is in the end what the BRICS are trying to challenge, we are also challenging this idea that placemaking can tell a different story, a different mythology for modernity. And I quote this very interesting book from one Indian scholar, one Indian historian called Shumati Ramaswamy, working on the idea of Lemuria. He's also working on the idea of an imaginary place. And he says modernity has not only been merely preoccupied with progress and advance, but we see all over the discussions on the theories of development. And Peter was remembering dependence theory and subaltern studies and the contributions of this, but also with loss and disappear. So loss is also good to think about modernity as development and progress are. My question is, my provocation is, can we frame BRICS through the same idea? Can we consider BRICS through the same kind of narrative of these imagined geographies of modernity? And if we think, for example, if we take in consideration, I will come back to this, but then if we take the original working paper of Jim O'Neill in 2001, this is small 7-8 pages paper on the idea of the BRICS, he says could probably so many times that that's an attempt to forecast future. So we are always in this kind of high Brazil mythology, trying to arrive to the coast of this island, which is moving further and further. Now I just want to come back. Yeah. Okay. So we after I mean Peter was addressing most of these huge debates on the idea of development and how peripheries were conceived through that. We know very well how the idea of third world influenced so much the geography of the debate on this. And after Second World War, how we at the margins of the modernity were considered divided through the schema of area studies, for example. And what was the kind of problem that this kind of division made to the study of or the lack of communication between realities as, for example, Asia, South America, Russia, and Brazil. So we actually are framed in a way that we only conceive cooperation in theoretical and practical terms to form a metropolis, like northern Atlantic countries, and ourselves. So you have specialists in sinology, which are Chinese and Anglophonic specialists. We have Latin American scholars and Latin Americanists. And it's kind of replicated in Indology, no matter the field. It replicates a schema that keeps us as these zebras or giraffes that are there to be studied, or at least one of the giraffes or zebras can speak sometime intelligent thing, but otherwise we are framed in this kind of division. This is not something. This is not something only for philosophical purposes, if you want, but there are actually very practical consequences of this kind of situation. I will show you some figures that more or less address how Brazil conceives cooperation in international cooperation in knowledge production. I come back to this. How Brazil addresses funds for research considering countries or regions in general. So I will show you. Oh my God. I will show you some data on where the resources of our main agencies are going to. For example, 2009, all the countries that we've been cooperating with, those are the the 20 most important ones. So you don't see, of course, any country of the periphery or south, with the probable, exception of Argentina sometimes, because the connection is an UNAUD connection that brings our countries together, and there are some specific programs there. This is the figure for 2010. You see some slight differences on this, but again, the same kind of frame. This next one is considering international cooperation on higher education, science and technology, meaning where are our students, boys and girls, going to? And these are the numbers of people going to Europe and North America against these numbers of people going to elsewhere. So you see the complete, enormous difference. And I think it's not only regarding the lack of interest. Of course, as Daniel was pointing out, it's completely out of their imaginary schema of students and even scholars that they can conceive cooperation or studying in places outside the Northern Atlantic universities or institutes. But in fact, the figures are really impressive in the way that it's less than 5% of the resources and people involved in international cooperation in this scientific scene that are going to countries that are not the usual suspects. This is not by chance that these things happen, because also most of our universities there were formed by missions of French, Americans, Germans, British, that went there to develop the departments, to develop schemas of scholarships, to develop agendas of research, and of course it is still there on the mindset, not only of scholars, but most importantly of officials from our agencies, from CNPq and CAPS, which are our biggest agencies, that conceive the idea that cooperating for science means development, modernity, technology. And whilst cooperating with southern emerging peripheral countries means aid, means I'll come back to this. Oops. Now it's moving along. I'm not even touching this. What did I do?
Sometimes it's happened with this.
Now I got it. Sorry. So just to give you a brief example of this, I mean, for 10 to 12 years now, it is mandatory to teach African history at school levels in Brazil. So every school should teach. There is a minor curriculum for that to the children. So universities had to merge it and develop chair of African studies. It's not the idea of studying Africa in Brazil. It's not started within the area study scheme. So we're not studying Africa like sub-Saharan Africa or Maghreb region and all. We're studying Africa because it belongs to our history, that you have a huge black population which came from Africa as slaves, so that's the justification of the law to have it. But anyway, if you want, okay, you studied Africa in your school, then you want to do an MA, or maybe later you want to cooperate and do a big research program with Africa. How many possibilities are available? You have 125 in 2010 agreements with COFECUB against 3 possibilities of cooperating with Africa in all the fields of science, from engineering to social sciences, from mechatronics to water resources and all. So this is more recent, where is the destination of the funding of our main agencies. This is comparing the amount of money going to Europe and the US against everything else. Of course, at political level, BRICS is a huge initiative for our country. But at the ground level, it's very difficult to convince both students, scholars, staff, and agencies on the importance of having funds specifically directed to initiatives as that. It is important that we conceive schemas for exchange of fellows and students, but still it is very much to be done. If we compare, Brazil has a very interesting program called PEC-G and PEC-PG, both for undergrad and graduate programs. It's an exchange program of students that is there since the 60s. So from now we have a huge number of people that were beneficiated from this, coming from Africa, places in Asia, emerging countries more than anything else. But if you compare in numbers, the amount of people beneficiated in this since the 60s is the same number you have per year at London School or even at SOAS. So it is not a problem of resource, as we were talking about Brazil Without Borders program. It is a brilliant program if you compare in numbers, in terms of resources to, for example, Europe, the Horizon 2020. It's more or less 7 to 10% of the total amount of Europe. So it's a huge amount for one single country to put on one particular program. But again, as my colleagues were saying, it's going on to technology. It avoids peripheral countries. It avoids human sciences. It's only directly to engineering, science of health. So what is this? I'm not playing the game of denouncing anything. I'm just saying that how it is difficult to reframe the imaginative framework of the importance of cooperating with countries like the BRICS and changing the local environment for funding this, for having resources available to do this kind of initiative. Okay, we want to have a student exchange. Who will sponsor this? If there's no specific program on this, and who will put money to make people to circulate? Which could be the challenge of this? Again, as Peter, Daniel, and Maxime was saying, previous initiatives to reframe social theory, like dependence theory, subaltern studies, and other experiences we could name here, they've worked very much on reorganizing the grammar of knowledge production, so to say. So together with the vocabulary of it. So if we want to have a new input on this idea of international cooperation for knowledge development within the BRICS, we should reframe the vocabulary that we're using together with the grammar. So we should have funds available and reorganize it in a way, for example, as Daniel was saying, what could be the problems, the social issues that affect our societies through unequal problems. I know we are similar societies, but problems that affect us are unequal. But then we should see that as emerging countries, we will face some challenges that are common, like the idea of city life, the urban studies, youth, social movements, gender and participation, scientific cooperation. How can we reframe the categories that organize this kind of initiative? For the recent past, before the BRICS appeared as a blockbuster idea for us, IBSA was there in the Brazil-South Africa cooperation. And most of these issues were already addressed. There were working groups doing on this. So there's accumulation on this kind of connection as well, which could take for granted. It's very much based on governmental efforts. I'm saying that at the political level, we have very much clear the commitment to the idea of BRICS, but at the ground level, still a lot should be done on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudio. Okay, questions? Well, I would start probably then. Well, I basically have one question and one comment, or kind of semi-question. So the question is, do you think that, well, this tendency to focus on technology, medicine, for the programs, to focus on that, for the programs of the development of science, etc., like in Brazil, for example, in Brazilian program. But the same goes on with, Russian programs, or, even Horizon 2020 is not, exactly humanistically oriented scheme. Do you think it does have something to do with the recent kind of change of the role of the university in the society in kind of, commercialization of what previously have been a Humboldtian kind of institution? So from, Humboldt, Enlightenment kind of vision of the university to more technology, knowledge economy kind of oriented institution. And if it's so, then, what kind of opportunities humanities and social sciences still have to survive in this? I mean, I understand this is huge philosophical kind of question, but on practical level, what can be done here? Second kind of also question and comment is that on the one hand, all our countries, and you are absolutely right in that, well, less probably China for the moment, more Russia. I mean, we exist in a culture of, maybe less Brazil even, we exist in kind of cultural ghetto, in a way that, well, for example, who would go to Yekaterinburg? Those who would like to study Yekaterinburg, nobody else. I mean, those who would like to study Urals, way of doing business in Urals, Russian language, but not, substance, well, engineering as such, Russia is interesting for Russian studies, Russian language, Russian literature, Dostoevsky kind of thing, maybe ballet, maybe, some musics, and that's it. Not kind of, well, nuclear physics maybe. This is a part of excellence. So, well, as we see here in Russia, our kind of long-term goal, this is a goal to go beyond and out of this cultural ghetto. We should be more interesting in, kind of substance for the students to come to study not Russian language and maybe not even in Russian language, but, engineering in English, not to go to MIT, but to go to Urfu. I mean, this is the vision. However, paradoxically, to go out of the cultural ghetto, we should, as Daniel commented, use cultural ghetto in a way. I mean, we invite people here to study Russian language, and then they start to be interested in kind of more substance. So we have, for example, Chinese students who came here, from well, say Beijing Aerospace Institute, just to study Russian and Russia, and then they started their PhDs here because they, found out that something valuable is going on not only in Russian studies. So, do you think this is a way, we can use humanities and social sciences in a way to promote, fuller representation, I would say, or representation of our countries globally?
There is something interesting, I think, about the BRICS countries that it's missing in most of the discussions on social science. That is, remembering that these countries were empires. Why is it important? Because they had experience of organizing diversity, dealing with diversity of languages, ethnicity, histories, to make it organized into the nation state. It was the case in Brazil, it was the case for Russia, it was the case for India, it was the case for all of these countries. So dealing with diversity is a key issue that affects agendas of social science and political agendas as well. So far, if you take, for example, the discussions on Brazilian sociology concerning race that Daniel was remembering, it's like normally taken as a very idiosyncratic issue of Brazilian nationality. Normally, when you compare the literature, you compare to the US, because it was considered as a society also formated by transference of slaves into America, and the kind of issues that they were facing were more or less the same. So when we started to discuss about reservation politics for universities and governments in Brazil, again, America was like the alter ego of Brazil. But recently, there are people doing comparative research with India, meaning that they are considering which were the achievements of India on politics of reservation. That is not the normal suspect to the theory and to the government. So, race reservation is one practical example when humanities can merge political agenda and actually influence it. You can also have, for the recent discussions on class formation, there's a huge debate in Brazil concerning the new middle class, which is the same for India, it is the same for China. Is there a new middle class? What does this mean? So it affects the theory, how the theory can be organized, and again, it affects perceptions of how people organize and perceive the society and how the government reacts towards this. Also, we can address consumerism or land property issues in big cities, or mobility. Those are problems, or the place of youth and social movements. This is affecting our countries in a very deep way. Again, there is interest for the political agenda on this. There's interest for, it can bring out new inputs to the theoretical debate that avoid trying to play the role against the more established theory. It's not that you say, okay, Durkheim was bad and wrong, it was colonial kind of sociology, let us ban it, let us ban Durkheim together with sociology, or maybe let us ban literature together with Victor Hugo. That's not the case. We can, as Daniel was suggesting, improve the vocabulary of humanities together with the discussion on politics. I think there's practical examples on how it can evolve.
Okay, any questions or comments on that? No. Okay, then thank you very much, Claudio. Now we are getting closer to lunchtime. I just would like to announce that, well, all presentations and talks will with your permission, will be published on our website. So I just noticed that you are taking pictures of the screen. You're welcome, but also you would be able to download, you know, the whole presentations from the web page. So I would ask, you know, all speakers who still did not send the presentations either to me or Anna, please do that, and we will be happy, you know, to publish all presentations. Now we have lunch. The lunch will be in your hotel, but this is very close. The lunch is organized in the hotel in Grant Avenue. We expect you to be back by 2 o'clock. You know, the afternoon today will be devoted to more kind of practical issues in the framework of what we discussed now. So today in the afternoon and tomorrow in the morning sessions, we are going to discuss, you know, our universities, our programs, and what we can start doing together on academic exchanges and maybe also joint research projects. Thank you very much for great morning, and enjoy your lunch.
you.